Okay, everybody, here we are again, David Sereda.co, my company, and we're talking today. See, when you understand pulsed electromagnetic fields, which is what PEMF stands for, then you think of what can you put in the field, which is the aura, that the human nervous system and the human nervous system energy field can partake of. Right. And one of the things that makes my PMF device is very, very different than Rife or anybody is that I vibrate gems so that when you vibrate a gem, there's many ways. Imagine like that's a big amethyst, right? Nicely cut amethyst. Imagine that you're going to bathe in the aura of an amethyst or a ruby, which is the queen of gems, or a golden citrine, right? You're gonna be inside the energy field of a gem. And one of the first things that inspired me is that when you read the Bible, you'll see the use of gems everywhere. You'll see the breastplate of Aaron has 12 gems in the breastplate. You'll see the descriptions of the pearly gates and the cubic city of God coming down on the earth in Revelation. And you'll see the descriptions of all of these gemstones at the gates. And you wonder why God, are they merely decorations, or is it the energy of a gem that is very, very special to partake of? And if you have a nice big gem like this and it's set in a ring or a necklace, it's basically, I don't want to say dead, but it's vibrationally inactive unless it's been activated by my technology, as my pendants are, right? I'm always wearing my pendant. And the what I discovered is that gems, this is the book that really changed everything for me. Okay, it's called Crystal Fire: The Birth of the Information Age by Michael Riordan and Lillian Hodison. And this book describes the use of crystals in electronics and how the entire information age was born out of crystal, therefore gem technology. And when the transistor was born in about 1947, there were three scientists that worked very deeply on it: John Bardeen, Will Bratton, and Will Shockley. And these guys argued with each other, but because they argued with each other, they eventually created the best transistor that changed the history of the world. In fact, I remember as a kid and growing up in Berkeley, California, and I won some money at the horse races with my dad and my brothers. I think I won $4.50 because that was a good amount of money in 1968. And I bought myself a transistor radio. And what I'm going to read to you is just a paragraph. And it's, see, transistors today are mostly used for gates. There's billions of transistors in an Intel computer chip today. They're so small you need a microscope to see them. But when the transistor was born, it replaced the tubes in amplifiers to amplifier signals. So it says, we have called it the transistor because it is a resistor or semiconductor device which can amplify electrical signals as they are transferred through it from the input and output terminals. It is, if you will, the electrical equivalent of a vacuum tube amplifier. But there is similarity, but there the similarity ceases, meaning it doesn't exist. It has no vacuum, no filament, no glass tube. It is completely entirely of cold, solid substances. The cylindrical object which I'm holding up is a transistor. Although it is a little bitty thing, it can up to a power output of about 100 milliwatts and up to a frequency about 10 megacycles or 10 million vibrations per second. Do just about everything a vacuum tube can do and some unique things which a vacuum tube cannot do. So in the early days, transistors, which were, they made them out of quartz, germanium, many different substances. They even had radioactive transistors. They had liquid transistors. And because of the transistor, we have the internet today. So because of this argument that went between these three guys, Will Shockley, John Bardeen, and Will Bratton, we have the transistor today. And because it came in 1947, a lot of people thought it came out of the Roswell flying saucer, but it really didn't. It came out of research done at Bell Labs in New Jersey, and these brilliant minds are conceiving this thing actually several years before the Roswell incident in July of 1947. So it's basically crystal technology, gem technology that changed the history of the world. And then I started looking at the auras of different gemstones. When they're vibrated, they release energy. So again, what makes my pulse electromagnetic field technology very different than any of theirs is we include gems in the vibrational energy field. So there's several ways that imagine if this is an ametrine, so it's amethyst and citrine. It's a really big, beautiful gem. Now, there's several ways to get the energy in this ametrine to release into the room so that my body can bathe in the energy field of this. And the way to do it is there's two methods. One is called pyro electricity, which means if I heat up a gem using heat, it will release its energy field. So that's one way to do it. I could just put it in boiling water and really heat it up. And I'll tell you, if you've got a fake gem with dye in it and you boil it, all the color comes out of it. And you should see when you're buying gems online, there are so many fake dealers. I've done this. I bought tons of stones and boil them, and there's no color left in them. And so they're not real. But once you know who the real dealers are, then you've got real gems. Now, the other way to get not only heat, but a far greater reaction than heat, and this is my mock-up. We came out with these gem lasers for acupuncture. So I have a sapphire in here, and I welded this together myself. It's nowhere near as good in quality as the gem lasers we have at davidsereda.co today. But when a laser passes through a gem, so that's laser light going through my sapphire, the electrons get excited because you're transferring very focused electromagnetic energy that's see, the higher the frequency, the higher the temperature, right? So blue light is higher in frequency than red light, right? So so the what happens is you're transferring energy into the gem electromagnetically as condensed light, and then the electrons in the gem, and a sapphire. See what you can do on the internet. Any gem you can think of. A ruby is chromium, and this is really amazing. But there's a documentary I saw years ago, and in this documentary in India, these shaman were curing people of all sorts of illnesses using rubies. And these people had given up on their doctors, and they went into the forest, and they were ingesting really fine talcum powder quality ruby dust. And it was curing all kinds of things. And the doctors couldn't believe it, of course. They never believed much of anything. But why is a ruby so powerful? And I realized if you ingest ruby powder, it's just going to pass right through you, go through your kidneys. In 2 or 3 days, it's all gone. So what is it really about rubies that are so powerful? Well, I know that NASA uses rubies in what are called masers, which are used in microwave um, communication systems, and that rubies produce, and also sapphires produce, an incredible function in microwave communication systems and microwave astronomy. So why don't we use them in healing? Now, if I just take a ruby that has not been vibrated, and I put it on my skin, and through the galvanic skin response, because my skin is electrical, I can measure voltage and current on my skin, off my ears, off my fingertips. If I add the ruby to my circuit, my electrical circuit, then theoretically it's going to share the vibration of the ruby with me. But I found that once I activated a ruby in this very dense fusion technology I have, and then I touch it, I start to have an incredible experience. Like if I hold the ruby here, if I hold the ruby here, if I hold the ruby on the thymus gland, I start to have a real experience. And that's because the energy in the ruby is no longer in the ruby. It's in an energy field around the ruby that I can, as if bathe inside of that energy field. And if I give it the correct frequencies that rubies like, then the whole body starts to get inside of the ruby energy. And that's why in all my Lightstream wands, we put tourmaline crystal in the core, electrode in the center of my electromagnet, and we put rubies on the face and sapphires and other gems. And as they vibrate in the pulses of the frequencies, they radiate, and they don't radiate through heat as much as they radiate because of the what's called piezoelectric effect. Is if I apply pressure, and there's different types of pressure. Electromagnetic pulse pressure is actually more effective than pressure. So what I mean by pressure is if I take this gem, this beautiful, amethyst citrine, ametrine, and I put it in my hands, I just got little goosebumps when I transferred that to the left and the right, because these are activated. Now, if I start tapping it, that's physical pressure. And if I keep doing that for about an hour and my fingers don't get tired, it will start releasing its energy into my nervous system. And that way I can partake of this gem. But if I just hold it there, I don't feel much compared to if I've activated this gem or I put it inside of one of my pulse circuit devices. So again, my pulsed electromagnetic field devices, all my coils, you can put 14 gems on the top of the coils inside of these little magnets, and the magnets vibrate, and the gem is getting pulsed physically through the magnetic vibrations, but also magnetically through the frequency vibrations, and it releases. So when people see the gems on my coils, it's not a decoration. It's for you to get inside the energy field of that gem. See, this is green ametrine. Real. So it's amethyst and citrine, but it's green, right? And this is this is a sapphire. And a sapphire is a aluminum ozone crystal. And the throne of God in the book of Ezekiel and also the book of Enoch, the throne of God is sapphire. So that's an aluminum crystal, aluminum ozone crystal. And sapphires can be more valuable than diamonds, which is why we use German lab-grown high quality under a microscope. That is a sapphire. And this is a ruby. But if I was going to buy a real ruby this size, which is 10 millimeters, it would cost me a minimum of $10,000 just for that ruby, if it's real, if it's natural. But rubies get outrageously expensive. They can cost upwards of over $1 million for a single ruby of not even very large size, depending on its quality. So I found that NASA, when they use what are called masers, and you can Google this, ruby maser, if you want to learn about how masers work, MASER, you can see their function is incredible. But again, going back to the jungles of India, why were these shaman curing so many people with rubies, and why don't doctors pay attention? What is it about rubies? So the the first Lightstream wands that I made, we used real rubies, but we had to use small ones because there were 6 of them in a single wand, and they're real, and they were very effective. But then I found I could get larger lab grown rubies, and they were very effective because they really are rubies, right? So the the idea of passing a laser through a sapphire for acupuncture, right? I did experiments, and I one of the experiments I did was on my own children. In the summer, my daughter Astoria was so restless, she was kicking all over the bed, and she couldn't go to sleep. I used an emerald, lab grown emerald laser with it, which means I passed a green light through a lab grown emerald, and I put it on here. I put it on all these acupuncture points. She went right to sleep, and an hour later, her body position did not move, which means she didn't toss and turn one more time. And that means that the transfer of the emerald energy into my daughter's nervous system really smoothed out all the bumps in the nervous system. I thought, this is incredible. And I did that repeatedly over and over and over again and got the same results. So, how did the information age, why was it born?
Can I ask you a question about that, David? Were
Yeah.
you not scared when she was sleeping so
Oh,
like
no.
that? No.
I can
You
see her
knew you
chest.
knew you knew it was there was no harm in that situation.
Oh, yeah. I could see her chest rising, falling. Her breathing is fine.
Right.
Right. I mean, the use of gems in the electronic and information age in transistors and crystal oscillators is so profound that, again, I'm amazed that doctors haven't taken, interest in the power, because science understands the piezoelectric effect and the pyroelectric effect of crystals and gems. But again, see, when a crystal is growing inside of the earth in a cavern or underground, it's getting pulsed by the earth's electric current, the frequency of the earth, the Tesla Schumann resonances. And that pulse is not only causing it to grow, but it's causing the crystals in the earth to emit, to emit, to emit. And so that's another way where you can take your gems that you buy and you can stick them back in the ground so that the bottom of the gem is inside of the pulse generator, which the earth is. You can also energize them in the sun. And one thing about sapphires, and I learned this from a very high source, and I read a physics paper on this, is sapphires give off their energy and their color. And if they're in the dark, they'll lose so much color. And if you put them back in the sun, all the color comes back and they re-energize. And they're actually breathing energy. Sapphires actually breathe energy. And this is another thing that has been studied at the university level. So again, if they're breathing energy, then you can partake of the sapphire energy. And why, again, is the throne of God in the book of Ezekiel a sapphire throne? What is the power of sapphires? And when we go back to the origins of the earliest staff of the prophets, going way before Moses, we see the legend of the sapphire staff. And it kind of makes sense. If the throne of God is sapphire, then the staff of God would be a sapphire staff. Now, again, sapphires are immensely expensive, especially if they're non-heat treated and natural. And actually, they're getting harder and harder to get large ones because very rich people are going to the mines and buying them before even the jewelers can get their hands on them. But again, if you have, I mean, when I see really beautiful, magnificent gems that are just sitting in museums, like, I think of them as a potential energy generator that could be releasing sapphire energy into a civilization. And because that energy field vibrates at the speed of light, we could all partake of that, the power of of that gem. So again, in my devices, we put different gems, custom gems in the staffs, and we put them in the scepters. And of course, now the gem lasers have become available again just recently because we had to recalibrate them. And I mean, when I think of acupuncture and the acupuncture points and the meridians on the body and the electrical activity of the nervous system, it makes so much sense that if I take a sapphire laser and I point it at a meridian point, right, then I am definitely not just playing around. I'm really transferring the energy of that gem into the body. But again, the energy in the gem won't come out and release itself into an energy field unless it's being, through the piezoelectric effect or the pyroelectric effect. And the pyroelectric effect, you can use lasers to create the pyroelectric effect, or you can use heat. And again, like I said, if you boil your gems and you heat them up and they lose color, then they were fake to begin with, because the dye comes up. I remember when I went to my first gem show in Tucson, Arizona, and I found this East Indian dealer. He was a very suave young guy, well dressed, and I thought, he sold me all these gems, and I brought them home and boiled them in water. They all turned white, all of them. So I spent all my money on fake stuff. So again, there's no point in having a beautiful piece of glass that has dye in it, because it's not going to be the same thing. It's not the same thing as being in the energy field of a German high quality lab grown gem or a natural gem. And again, the amethyst and the citrines and blue topaz and peridot, which is green, chrome diopside, which is green, are all reasonably priced gems to work with. And there's so many different kinds of gems. And metals are crystals too under the microscope, right? So that means this is another thing to consider. I have this website booked, I just have to find it, which is the speed of sound in different materials. And what's amazing is the speed of sound, of course, moves faster through water than it does through air. But guess what? The speed of sound travels the fastest. It goes over 11,000 miles an hour through aluminum and iron, but beryllium is the fastest. It's over 22,000 miles an hour. So beryllium, again, is beryl. You'll see the use of beryl in the Bible. Like, I can just Google beryl stones in the Bible, and the beryl stones in the Bible. Of course, the breastplate of Aaron has beryl, right? And aquamarines, which is in my bracelet, is beryl. It's a beryl. It has beryllium in it. And oh my God, there's so many Bible verses about beryl. So again, there's stones and gems listed all throughout the Bible. And the purpose is not about just the decorative beauty of the gem and the prestige of wearing, something like this on your third eye, right? It's not about that. It's about the qualities. There are unnamed qualities in each gem, and as you learn to experience them, like, you can take any of my coils and you can put a gem on the coil for about 30 minutes, and if you pick that gem up, everyone who has my coils says this, they can feel that and they use it for healing, but in about another half an hour it's all gone. So that means that you can put stones, you can put riverbed stones, those are basalt, and riverbed stones are basalt. And actually, a lot of the rocks on the moon are actually basalt. Basalt has incredible healing energy properties. In fact, I've taken a ion meter, and an ion is an atom of any kind, a gold ion, a silver ion, a beryllium ion, that an atom with an extra electron, either negative or positive. So you have a negative ion has a negative electron, positive ions have positive charge. So you can measure the ions with this meter. And I was going around with my ion meter trying to see where all the positive and negative ions are in nature. And of course, ocean surf, because it's salt. And what happens in salt water when salt crystals are smashing in the ocean waves upon each other? That's called piezoelectricity, because sodium is a crystal. And your body can't live without sodium. Your blood is saline, which is sodium. And when the salt crystals in the water are doing this in the ocean surf, they're releasing energy, and you get a lot of ions in ocean surf. But to my amazement, the most ions I could measure with this $700 ion meter was in hot rocks and fire. So again, pyroelectricity means heat. So if you heat up rocks or heat up stones, they release energy. And of course, when your crystals are stagnant, meaning they're not hot, or you can go from hot to super cold too, and they'll release a huge burst of energy. Or if you're patient and you take a quartz crystal and you just tap it, it takes about a whole hour to do this. You should try this. Just keep tapping it, and it'll eventually start to really radiate some really serious energy into the body. And that way you can get the benefits of a natural gem just using your fingers. And usually, meditators are very patient, so they'll be able to sit there and tap a stone with their hands. Also, for a massage therapist, when your hands get really
Within
hot,
seconds.
yeah, if your hands are really hot and you get your hands on a good, nice stone and you really heat
Yeah.
it up, and then you put it on somebody, it will release some energy into them. And again, I've seen the auras taken of different gemstones. They don't all have the same aura. They're all completely different. Some of the auras have different shapes in the energy field. Some gems have brighter auras, some have weaker auras. Some stones of different kinds will start emitting at very particular frequencies. So this area of pulse electromagnetic field is therapy is what I started, over 15 years ago in Sedona, Arizona, with my first Lightstream wands that came out, and we got tremendous results. So the reason I'm doing this talk today is to let you know the gems in my system are not decorative. There's nobody else that I know of, other than amethyst beds. And again, most of those amethyst beds are just quartz crystal with purple dye in them, because I've done it. I've taken them, boiled them, or you just take your fake amethyst and put it in the sun. In about a week, it turns white. So that's not amethyst. Real amethyst, you can leave it in the sun and it's still purple. So the a lot of the amethyst beds are fake amethyst. I mean, you can't get real amethyst in that quantity and put it in an amethyst bed. So technically, even though there's no frequencies going in an amethyst bed, they're just using one low frequency to produce heat, and it doesn't really, the frequency they use doesn't have any benefit. But technically, it is a crystal um, pulse electromagnetic field device, an amethyst bed, but there's no frequency there. And again, most of that amethyst is not amethyst. It's just quartz, and it's low grade quartz. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have benefit, because what gives amethyst the purple color is trace iron and other trace minerals give it the purple color, right? So an amethyst is an iron. Like if I go, here's how you know what your gem is made out of. So let's just go, I'll go amethyst, chemical formula. So you can take any gem and Amethyst is, it's really hard to get a really good, it's quartz. Its basic formula is quartz, but the color is trace minerals, which include iron. So there's my amethyst. Its chemical formula is SiO2, which is, it's just, it's quartz, but its color comes from trace minerals and iron. So yeah, here we go. Amethyst is a purple variety of quartz, and it owes its violet color to irradiation impurities of iron, and in some cases other transition metals. So there you go. So that's, it's basically quartz with trace iron, right? So that's what it is. And but its geometry can be slightly different due to those traces of minerals. Now, if I go ruby chemical formula, it's chromium. Ruby chemical formula is aluminum 2, and it's and a sapphire and a ruby are quite similar. Emeralds have beryllium. An emerald is a beryllium stone. Beryllium, aluminum, and silica. Sorry, quartz, SiO, but it's SiO 6. That emerald is an incredible. Yeah, and of course it has beryllium. There you go. So, and beryllium vibrates faster than any physical element on the periodic table. It produces the fastest vibration. So, a sapphire is, again, you can't just rely on Wikipedia for this because they don't have the what are called the subtle impure. So a sapphire is an aluminum oxide with trace amounts of iron, titanium, chromium, vanadium, or magnesium. So those trace minerals are what give it the color. But a sapphire is basically an aluminum ozone crystal. So why would the throne of God in Ezekiel be sapphire? So you want to find out, you want to start experiencing the energy field of a sapphire, and so that's why we came out with the gem lasers, where the laser is passing through. Now also, there's a physicist named Raymond Chow at Berkeley, and this was a long time ago. I spoke to Raymond Chow when he was in his office at Berkeley, and he caused energy, electromagnetic signals, to go faster than light by passing lasers through quartz. And he was able to go over 3.5 times the speed of light in the early days. And he didn't know why it was happening. And I knew why it was happening. And him and I had this incredible conversation. I wish I would have recorded that conversation, but it was when the internet was very young and they didn't have things like Zoom and YouTube in those days. But he knew that the energy was going faster than light by passing a laser through the quartz. So that means when a laser passes through, especially an optically clear gem, a high quality gem, it's going to generate faster than light energies, which are theoretical tachyon energies. So tachyon energies can be generated quite easily by passing a good laser through a gem. But the different kinds of gems have different crystal geometries. Every single element on the periodic table falls into a category of crystal lattice geometries, right? So the ruby is a hexagonal crystal system. When you go on Wikipedia and you put in the name of the gem, it tells you the chemical formula and the geometry of the crystal matrix. And so, but all elements, including metals, have a crystal lattice matrix. It's called the crystal lattice. And so everything in nature, the geometries are all base 6, right? A cube has 6 sides, and there you've got a lot of hexagonal crystal systems, and you've got 6 pyramids in a cube, which is really incredible because a cube has 6 sides and a pyramid has 5 sides. So you've got a 5 and a 6 pattern. And so you see the basis of all geometrical structures are at the crystal lattice scale. And it's actually the crystal lattice of certain gems that compresses a light wave and causes it to go faster than the speed of light. Then another Chinese American physicist named Li Wang at Princeton University, they sent 6 lasers into all different directions into cesium chloride, and they went over 400 times. The signal went over 400 times the speed of light. The work became classified. We never heard about Li Wang again. We never heard about the faster than light experiments. And that work, I literally believe, became actually classified. So you can even Google that, Li Wang faster than light experiments at Princeton. There's a tiny bit of it. It was in the mainstream news, and then it vanished. Of course, cesium vibrates at around 9 billion times a second. It's a very high frequency vibrational material, and it's what we use to keep time in atomic clocks, actually. And so all elements on the periodic table have incredible hidden properties. And by making a pulse electromagnetic therapy device that incorporates certain gems, and we let customers pick the gems they want to put in their wands. I even got a nice big aquamarine in my Lightstream wand, and aquamarines are pretty pricey. They're not cheap if they're real. Remember, if you're not experienced with gems, don't go on Etsy or eBay and try and buy yourself a real gem. You might get a real one, but you might get fake stuff. And you put it in the pot and boil it. If all the color comes out, you got fake stuff. And you can pay a lot of money for fake stuff. Yeah, a light wand tank. I mean, I've got technology like that, but to do it properly, the material for the container of the tank has to be impenetrable, and it's extremely heavy, and I could only make them on an installation sites, and they're very expensive to make. So yes, I could do it in a tank, and I've done that here, but even the tank I have here is over 200 pounds, and you can't just go to the post office and mail that to a customer. I'd have to do an installation in a certain location. So anyway, yeah, we have.
There's questions.
Yeah, I'm looking at them right now. Yeah, I think
Okay, I'll let you look for them. I usually go to the top and go down to do them in order, but this one's anything about the Tartarians and what seems to be sacred geometry in buildings healing with sound.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're getting into architecture of actual buildings. I mean, Nikola Tesla placed this small handheld device on the side of a building in New York, and it tapped the building, kind of like I'm telling you about tapping the crystals. But it was so perfectly timed that when it tapped the building, and the vibration went through the building and returned to the device, the second it returned to the device, it tapped it again. And it created an earthquake, and everybody went running out of the building and thought there was an earthquake. And Tesla just took the thing off the side of the building, and everything stopped shaking. So again, it's all, and that's piezoelectricity. But he was a master at knowing how to amplify this vibrational effect to the point that he could have taken down the entire building, right? But the geometry of a building, see, I think our buildings are closed systems that they don't allow energy to flow in and out because of the geometry that they were made in. So we put air ducts, ventilation systems that get very dirty and full of bacteria in these huge, high-rise buildings. The quality of the air inside is very poor. But there's a way with my systems to keep the energy moving, circulating, because that's what my coils do. Because when you have a magnetic field that's spinning, the physical component, the electromagnetic force in the copper is spinning at 2/3 the speed of light. That's an incredibly fast vortex. So all this stagnant energy in the building is going to go through the vortex and get recycled and keep the energy moving. But that's because we live in a technological environment that has a lot of dirty electrical field pollution that can affect human consciousness. Absolutely can affect human consciousness. And if you go into a natural system, a natural ecosystem, you have electric fields around plants. Plants have auras, energy fields. Stones will absorb energy in the day and emit at night. And so you have this whole natural energy cycle that is circulating, right? Stones are absorbing in the day and emitting at night. Plants, switch their oxygen and carbon cycle, day and night. But our buildings don't do that. So the energy can get really stagnant in a building. And if we want workers to be more productive, and you put one of my systems in a building, all of a sudden the people feel energy. They feel the energy's moving, and their minds are not as stagnant. They become more creative, and they don't get as deadhead. Your head can get really dead in a droning, dead environment. I would design a building, if I had a piece of paper here with a pencil, like instead of just a square, for example, on your corners, you would have this. Instead of this, you would have this. And so you'd have an inflow. And on the other side of the building, you'd have the opposite, which is an outflow. And that's for air. And air ventilation in a building that's a rectangular square base, if it had that opening on the two ends of the square or the rectangle, the energy would flow in and it would flow out. But again, we close the whole system in. We put vapor barriers, plastic vapor barriers over the wood, over the plywood. And we used to put breathable paper, and now we don't. So the building can't breathe. And you go in these nice new buildings, they're nice when they're brand new, but the energy gets trapped in there. So how do you move energy in a trapped environment? You put one of my vortex coils in there, and you run it several times a day, or you can run it all day on really low power, because an amplifier will heat up. If you don't want to run it on 90% power all day, right? Imagine playing music on a stereo system all day at 90% power. You're going to blow up your amplifier. But if you turn it down nice and low, the energy will circulate in the building, and you'll feel a huge difference in the efficiency and the quality of energy and mind, because the energy is moving. And that's, of course, how a galaxy works. Like, let's look at the new, if I don't know if anybody's seen the new images from the James Webb Telescope. How does a galaxy work? It's a vortex. It circulates energy, and it goes through the black hole, and it comes out the other side, theoretically faster than light, and then it recirculates it throughout the universe. And if when energy doesn't circulate like that, like a vortex, a galaxy is a vortex energy generator, then everything is dead. The whole system is dead. And our biomagnetic field is a tube torus. We have a north and south magnetic field, and all around us we have this magnetic energy field. And if you put it in a box and it doesn't have circulation, it gets really numb. It gets really dead. So when I look at employers and I say, if you want the people who work for you to not feel deadhead, so you might get exercise, you might get some air before you go in the office, but once you get in there, you start to feel cut off. So you can use systems like this or redesign buildings with an inflow and an outflow, right? And I think people would feel a lot better. But what I'm talking about today is the power of the energy field of gems. And again, when you pulse a gem, you're releasing that energy of the gem into the environment. So now you get to experience the consciousness of a ruby, the consciousness of a sapphire, the consciousness of an ametrine, the consciousness of a blue topaz. And you'll notice when you become really sensitive that you'll be able to detect the subtle nuances. What is the difference of amethyst energy field versus a blue topaz energy field? You'll know. Your nervous system will know that I feel like being inside of this gem today, right? Inside of that gem today. Now the problem is I've got these gems at a gem show over 14 years ago. These things are expensive today. They're really expensive. And with COVID, a lot of the mines, stopped producing. And a lot of my friends who were in Sedona today said the price of crystals and gems in gem stores have gone way up, way up. So the the quality systems are expensive. They'll last you your whole life if you take care of them. So they're not really that expensive because this thing's going to last you 100 years if you take care of it, right? And that's why I separate the emitter coil, wand or staff from the power source, from the frequency source. And a lot of these cheap PMF devices made in China, you got a cheap garbage amplifier and you've got a really garbage quality frequency source and you got an emitter that is really poor. I've looked at so many of them. I'm not going to name these companies on the air for liability, but I can tell you I wouldn't lay on any of these systems. No way. Because once you know what it's like to be in a quality energy field, I don't want to spend $8,000 on a mat system that is just got tiny little copper wire coils, doesn't have any gems, and has rubber and a cheap amplifier that if you played music through that amplifier, it would sound like garbage. You wouldn't even want to listen to it. So and there's people out there making their own systems, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of cool ideas, but again, the shape of your coil really matters. It's structure versus no structure. I mean, you can't just take a crystal and wrap a bunch of wire around it. That's pure chaos. You've got to have structure, and you've got to understand what a quality emitter, how you make a quality emitter. And again, I've had people say they're going to go do everything on their own, and you're going to spend way more money, and you're going to buy gems that are fake. You're going to do all kinds of things, and you're going to spend all this time. And meanwhile, the clock is ticking, rent is due, and you're going to think, am I saving any money here? No, because I did this already. I've made so many mistakes. I've made things that don't work, and I've made things that work. And when a person goes out and tries and does it on their own, unless they're experienced, because some of them are experienced and know how to make them on their own, then they'll do a good job. But you know, if you're not a person who has any experience, you're going to spend way more money trying to do it on your own, and it's not going to. I mean, I've had people send me pictures of staffs they made on their own in the garage, and all the power to them. Go try it. It's fun to try it. Go do it. But
David, there's a
yeah,
question. In Vedic astrology, they say that certain crystals, gemstones, are bad for certain people. Have you ever looked into this from a scientific perspective?
I've never heard in astrology that, I mean, everybody has a birthstone, and every stone has certain qualities. But I've actually never heard that a certain stone, unless it's like, remember the SE pendant? Oh, I shouldn't even say that name. This pendant, they came, those people came to me in Sedona, Arizona with my wife, and they got out the SE pendant. Turns out it's nuclear radioactive material, by the way. People were buying them by the millions. And the company came to me and they wanted to do what's called an ice cube test. So they put one of my pendants, which are vibrationally activated, they put an ice cube on it and a tray underneath, and they put the SE pendant side by side, and my pendant melted the ice cube faster, which means it was emitting more energy. And theirs, turns out, was nuclear radioactive material. And even though we beat them, they still didn't want to use our pendants. They still wanted to sell theirs. And eventually people figured out, using a nuclear radiation meter, that they were. Now, certain stones may contain radioactive emitting materials, trace uranium. And so a stone like that could be harmful. A stone like a conflict diamond, I would say, could be harmful. It needs to be revibrated and reharmonized, because stones are, they have living spiritual energy attached to them. And you know what? Another thing I tell people, Dean, is that you will most likely be attracted to the right stone for you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've never experienced a gemstone that I didn't experience the positive attributes of that gem. Just like the planets, right? In astrology, you have a negative aspect and a positive aspect of the planets. And Swedenborg goes into this, his book on planets, that each planet has a positive spiritual aspect and a negative spiritual aspect. And you can say the same thing about life on Earth today. But I actually like all gems. I don't think I've ever encountered a gem that had a negative. That's an interesting thing. Dean, I can't say I know the answer to that. I don't know the answer to that. But I also don't come from any. I don't have any fear on the spiritual plane very much at all. I've encountered the worst being in the universe, and I'm not afraid of that being at all. But I don't like that being, but I'm not afraid. But are there gems that might not be right for a person? A person can sample, right? They can hold on to it. Some gems might cause you to detox, and a lot of people don't like detoxing. So they'll do a session on a pulsed electromagnetic field device, and they'll have all this detox, and they'll say, "Oh, I don't like this because it's making me throw up," or, "Well, I'm detoxing." Well, that's what happens when you detox. It's uncomfortable. So maybe you should detox a little slower by turning the power down on the amplifier on your pulsed electromagnetic field device. But as far as a negative aspect of a gem, I don't know anything about that. I don't have that experience, because I get into the spirit energy of all the gems that I have around here, and I can feel the ones that I've treated in my fusion energy um, device. And if I get a stone in the mail and I pick it up and I add it to my nervous system circuit, and I try to feel if there's any energy there, I can't feel anything. And then once I vibrate it, then suddenly it comes alive again. And remember, gems grew inside the earth in the presence of the vibrations of cosmos and the earth itself, and that's what made them grow. And they're growing in an energy field, and when you unplug them, if the process is greedy and violence and wrong intention, the stone will probably get offended, and may give off a bad vibration, and it needs to be retuned, right? I mean, at one point in my business, I said you can send in your jewelry and it can get reactivated with my frequencies in my fusion drive technology, and they'll feel a lot different when you get them back. But that was a lot of work, and it was very time consuming, and it wasn't really worth, at that time, it wasn't really worth my time. I could actually sell systems for people who want to run a business like that. But again, people have to understand that even if you have a beautiful, expensive gem, even though it's beautiful and it's very expensive and prestigious, it may not be giving you positive energy. Again, if it was a conflict type of diamond. But Astaria, what are you doing? What you doing, baby? You gonna do some artwork? Okay. Anyway, thanks everybody for being here. I've got to run because I got to get back to my little daughter here. We've been swimming all day. And if you have more questions, you can ask Rose, or you can send in an email. So have a great day.